everyone hear and see me? Okay, beautiful. Assalamu alaikum. May peace and blessings be upon you all. Thank you so much for coming today. Esteemed guests, beneficiary partners, our sponsors, dear friends and family, hopefully after tonight. On behalf of the Intuitive Foundation, I would like to welcome you to the much anticipated launch of the Women in Power campaign. Over the next 12 months, we will visit 12 cities to raise $1.2 million in impact for placing women in power. And you are part of this launching event. Those who come later are not like the ones who came here first, and you are part of that historical launch of the Women in Power movement. My name is Ivana. I have introduced myself, I believe, to most of you. I have the great honor to serve as the Executive Director of the Intuitive Foundation. We are an organization that is on a mission to unlock the potential in individuals and in our communities to create a better world for all of us. And now you are part of our mission just by being here today and being part of this movement. We are gathered here to inevitably celebrate the incredible strides that women have made in leadership positions and to support all the continued efforts in this field. We're here to support the efforts of breaking down barriers, to create opportunities and pave the way of more women in leadership, more women in power. We're also here to recognize the critical role that diversity, equity, and inclusion plays in building stronger, more equitable communities and societies eventually. We know that when we have diversity of perspectives, diversity of opinions, diversity of experience at the table, everyone benefits. We make better decisions, we have innovative action, and we make the world a better place together. While tonight, as we said, is a celebration of the strength, the intelligence, the tenacity, and the resilience that women in leadership positions bring, all of you here tonight. It's also an opportunity for us to dream together, to discuss ways forward together, and to move the needle in some real tangible ways tonight together. We know that we either rise or we fall together. While we do not personally, as the Intuitive Foundation, subscribe to any movement or philosophy, we recognize all of those efforts and we appreciate all of those efforts because we understand it's going to take all of us together. It's going to take every individual, every organization working hand in hand to see the change that to bring about the change that we want to see in this world. Furthermore, this is exactly why tonight, although the Intuitive Foundation, sponsored by Hasana.org, are hosting this event, this is not about the Intuitive Foundation. We are thrilled to have worked alongside 7 visionary, exceptional organizations that are dedicated to this cause, that are dedicated to moving women in positions of power so that we can create a better world for everyone. At this moment, do allow me to thank these organizations that have been with us on this journey and continue to be with us on this journey as we work together. Bayan Islamic Graduate School, the Muslim Women's Organization, represented here. Embrace, a project of ICNA. Impact, Rabata, and Masafan. One more, and Ibn Khaldun University. We have a lot of them. Thank you so much. Tonight is about you and the impact you make, the real impact you make on the ground. Also, as I mentioned, I do want to thank our sponsors, Hasana.org, which provided us with a platform to showcase your impact, to allow us to spread the word of the good work that you're doing. So tonight, let me take this opportunity to applaud the remarkable achievements of women who have accomplished so much. We have come a long way. We have made great strides. And let's also commit tonight ourselves to creating a future where we have more women, more pathways for women in power. Together, let us work in a real way to dismantle the obstacles that hinder women from being in these positions and establish a more equitable society for all of us. So throughout the night, we will be recognizing different projects of the organizations that I've mentioned. They're all going to be on our platform. We've made it very easy for you to get involved, as I said, in very tangible ways in supporting these efforts. And whatever cause speaks to you and your heart, we each have something placed in our hearts that it just lights up when something happens, when someone starts talking about certain things, and that thing in us just lights up. Whatever that is, whichever cause does that for you, pick that cause and support it. Thank you so much. So, we're moving into our next item for tonight. We are going to be joined by leading visionaries, thinkers, and doers. We have Dr. Hashmi, Commissioner Chaudhry, Ms. Crutchley, Dr. Yunus. If I could have you come up to the panel. We will have a short panel discussion, and then we will have Isra as our facilitator. Thank you all for gracing us with your presence. I know you could have been in so many different places tonight, and you chose to be here, and most of you flew from somewhere else. And you know how airports and traffic has been, so they've all made it here by the blessing of God, and I am more than honored to be here with all of you. Thank you so much.
Let's give a round of applause for Ivana, for hosting this, for being an incredible speaker and bringing this community together. What a beautiful space. So I'm joining you from Washington, D.C., where I flew in this morning. My name is Isra Shakir. I'm a Syrian American activist, advocate, and humanitarian who personally and professionally understands the impact of the organizations like Hasana, that the umbrella that they've served with all these incredible people that are on the panel today. The impact is where it's at. The impact is what we need to continue to keep our eyes on and we continue to invest in. When we see the investment that you all make $1 to each of these communities or on the platform Hasana and how it goes and how far it goes, you know that the impact that you're having makes a difference. And this is coming from someone who is in DC, who's meeting organizations and working in spaces all day, every day. I currently work for the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, where I lead their immigration strategies across the country on a national basis. I am also a consultant in my personal capacity and a public speaker, going to as many organizations, conferences, and student campuses to come together and share the right narrative of me as a Muslim American woman, as my contributions to this incredible country, but also the change that this country needs and how we all need to be part of that change collectively. So that's what brings me here today, and I'm more honored to be introducing this incredible panel, that I'm facilitating this amazing discussion. And I really hope it's one where we can all learn together, where we can really listen to the panelists and what they have to contribute, and hopefully after that we'll take questions from the audience. I'm gonna start off by introducing the panelists officially. So I'm going to start at the end. Jackie, if you want to raise your hand. So Jackie Crutchley is a senior program coordinator at the American Association for Cancer Research. She also served on the board and as the program chair for Women International Leaders of Philadelphia. She has worked as an account analyst, consultant for business development, and an event planner. I mean, what can you do, right, Jackie? She advocates for human and women's rights and is an active community builder. Let's welcome Jackie to the stage, everybody. Next up, we have Dr. Farhana Yunus, and mother of 4 boys and 1 girl, mashallah, I don't know how you do it. I have 1 and it's a lot, an optometrist, and has completed the Ribat teacher certification through the Ribat Academic Institute. She has taught clinical nutrition at St. Matthew's Medical School. She loves teaching and empowering young boys and girls as both a Boy Scout and Girl Scout troop leader. Let's welcome Dr. Farhana Yunus. And please, as you're coming in, please take a seat. We're just getting started on, I think, the most exciting part of the night, even though people would argue that it's actually the dessert part. Maybe you're right, who knows, we'll see when we taste it all. Next up, I want to introduce Peggy Chowdhury, who after college, Peggy took a position with the US Department of Homeland Security as an immigration officer, and with a short time, was promoted to adjudications officer with Citizenship and Immigration Services in the Orlando District Office. Wow, mashallah. Currently, she's the president of Hospitality Sidekicks, a consulting firm that helps small hotels find success. And she's the Osceola County, I think Osceola, I was right the first time, trust my gut, County Commissioner. Let's welcome Peggy.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, a little bit outnumbered on the stage here with the incredible powerhouse of women, but we have Dr. Javad Hashmi, who's a part-time emergency physician and the Director of Research and Strategic Communications at MPAC. And if you don't know MPAC, it's the Muslim Public Affairs Council. I've worked with MPAC in the DC bureau of theirs, and they're also really big in Hollywood, so they do incredible work for the Muslim narrative across the country. He holds a PhD candidacy in the study of religion from Harvard University and has earned degrees in Arabic and Islamic studies from UC Berkeley and Harvard. He produces the Impactful Scholar, MPAC's YouTube show, while completing his doctoral dissertation. I don't know how you have the time, Dr. Hashmi, and yet they're all here today to bring this incredible energy and their stories and their narrative to this room. So let's give a round of applause for all of our panelists before we get started. Okay, so the first question is, what brings you here today? I know how impressive you are, but I think it would be so good for you to share why you're here at this event as part of this campaign, Women in Power, Building Better Worlds for Everyone. Jackie, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I just returned it on because when I clapped, you could hear my clapping. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I'm very honored to be on this stage with such impactful women and men, and also in a room of, I'm sure, immense talent. My call to leadership started with one conversation. After converting to Islam, I had a loneliness that I couldn't fill. I kind of moved myself away from the community because as a convert, I knew that this one saying that we constantly, repeat is that Islam is perfect, but Muslims are not. And so I didn't want to enter into communities and have that joy and that faith taken from me because of, the issues that the communities were facing. But after a year of doing that, I started to crave something, and I started to feel something that was missing. My second Ramadan as a new Muslim, I ate every single iftar alone. Even my born Muslim friends didn't invite me to their homes. The one time that I got to have that taste of community was when I invited them to my home. And I realized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us an ummah for a reason. So I started to seek that out. I made dua. I made space in my life and I made dua. And I ended up at an ICNA convention. And at that convention, I heard about an organization called Embrace. It was for reverts, by reverts. It was to build not only community, but also leadership within the convert community. And so I stalked the speaker and I got exchange numbers and I reached out as soon as possible. And once I got a response, they had told me, they only were operating in Dallas, and at the time they didn't have any, you guys can hear me. Yeah. They didn't have any plans to expand at the moment. So I wasn't satisfied with that, but I made room in my life. My position at Women International Leaders for Philadelphia was mainly in microfinance, and it stopped being fulfilling for me. So I found a replacement and I trained them, and it took several months. And then I made Dua Tola Sfarnatal to take that time and fill it with something fulfilling. And then I got an email a year later that Embrace was ready to have a chapter, their third chapter in Pennsylvania. So we got on a conference call and we talked about, how this was going to happen. And one question came up was, who's going to lead this initiative? And so almost immediately one of the brothers go, well, if no one else wants to do it, I'll do it. And I said, how about we get to know each other a little bit better? How about we talk to each other and see where our skill sets are? And then we can nominate the best person to be the lead. So we went around on the conference call and everybody got to share. And by the end of that conference call, I had unanimously been nominated. Now, the point of that wasn't for me to step into leadership, but really to level the playing field. And that's what Women in Leadership does. It levels the playing field and it makes better decisions. This is what our studies show us. And so today, not only were we able to launch that chapter, I was nominated the lead for the entire Northeast region, which included new chapters such as New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. I currently serve on the advisory board for Embrace. And because I knew my community deserved a leader, thank you, no problem. And because I knew my community deserved a leader who was educated and passionate enough to address the real life challenges that they face every single day, tough challenges, including, marriage and divorce and issues within the LGBTQ narrative, and some sisters becoming homeless after they convert or jobless because they're wearing hijab. I knew that I needed to myself be educated to step up into that position that they were putting me into. And so I also am a recipient of the Bayan Scholarship and getting my master's degree in Islamic education. Thank you.
MashaAllah. That's wonderful. Let's go on to Dr. Farhana.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah. That is so beautiful, so beautiful, inspiring. So my journey into this leadership started with my love and my passion for education. I'm a student of sacred knowledge for life. This is what I tell people. I love it. So when I first got married, I was like, well, I want to go on to get my Islamic studies, get more knowledge. And there weren't many outlets, right? There wasn't any online education. There wasn't any Islamic universities where we could go. So it was kind of like your own masjid community. You would look for maybe the imam to sit with and learn with. I couldn't really travel overseas. That's where all the other people were going. So I kind of just went through that and made lots of dua. Ya Rabbi, we need, right, in the West, we need educational institutions, and especially for women. Because other organizations were opening, starting. ICNA has a beautiful educational wing, but the scholars were also all male, which is fine. They were excellent teachers, but you couldn't develop that relationship like you wanted to, that access to education, that close access. And so continuing my journey, I'm like, the community I've lived in, there wasn't anybody doing classes for women or teaching. So I'm like, you know what? I'll just start a study circle with women. We'll just do it ourselves, right? We'll just get started. And subhanAllah, from there, my sister calls me and she's like, I met this amazing sheikha. And I'm like, sheikha? In the United States? They come here, they exist? She's like, yeah, she started this organization called Rabata. And she's like, this is your space. You need to come to this Ramadan retreat they're having for women. So I'm like, okay, I've got to drop everything and just be there. This is my space. This is where I have to be. And subhanAllah, when I went to the Ramadan retreat, and it was basically one of the men there in that community in Michigan. He has 4 daughters, and he wanted his daughters to have access to education, to leadership positions, so he facilitated a lot of that. And when he passed away, he donated his house for women to have a space to meet, to grow, and a place for them to be educated. So the retreat was there. And subhanAllah, when I met Auntie Tamra, I'm like, this is it. This is home. This is where I was meant to be. The education was beautiful, right? She's traditionally trained in Syria, in traditional scholarship. Access to her was so easy. We could sit, ask questions, learn about our deen one-on-one. This is the space I needed. And her goal was to create positive cultural change through creative educational experiences. And I'm like, this is my space. Because I love education, but also there needs to be educational leadership for women, accessibility, all of this. And this is what she had created. And subhanAllah, that first retreat, what she had us do is go to the masjid that afternoon. It was Jummah. We had all different states we had come to meet there. And she said, we're going to change the narrative in our mosques. You know, when you go to a new mosque, you really don't know, where's the women's area? Where's the prayer area? Where do I make wudu? Like, where am I supposed to go? You're all confused. And typically in mosques, you just kind of muddle yourself and find your way. So she's like, what we're gonna do is like Christians do. You have a greeter at the entrance of the church. She goes, all of you are going to be greeters in this masjid. This is our first time in this masjid. I'm like, she's lost her mind. I don't know anybody here. I'm gonna greet other people to this masjid, okay. So she pushed us outside our comfort zone. This is how you make positive cultural change. So we went to this mosque. I went in, I was at the entrance, I found the entrance. Whoever came in, I'm like, welcome to our masjid. And I kind of knew where the bathroom was. This is the women's area. This is where you're gonna go. There's a space upstairs. The women just lit up because there's someone there to show you where to go. So I went upstairs, sat down. Anybody that came in, I found them a spot. This one lady came in and she came to me and she's like, I really appreciate what you're doing. Our mosques needed this. And then I asked her where she came from. And subhanAllah, she happened to be the mother-in-law of one of my very good friends' sister back home here in Florida. She's like, but you're not from Michigan. I go, I know, but I'm here at a Ramadan retreat. And this is one of our challenges, to push us out of our comfort zone, to be in these spaces where we create this cultural change, positive cultural change. So subhanAllah, from that point on, I joined Rabata, started taking classes with all the teachers, and it just transformed my life. So I came back to Orlando, I'm like, I need to bring this here. This is a space designed by women, for women. But the men are not subtracted from this equation. The men of Rabata are our biggest supporters. There's no way we could do this without their support. My husband is like the #1 fan. He's like, we need a Rabata for men, because he sees what impact it makes. And subhanAllah, so I started teaching in Orlando, gathering community, and I teach on Rabata's forum. And it's such an honor and a pleasure to be there in that space, to challenge women and challenge communities to think outside the box and make that positive cultural change.
That's amazing. Thank you, Dr. Farhan. That was very inspirational. Let's keep going with this amazing panel. I was going to keep hearing what's next. Peggy?
I don't know if this is working. No, it is. Okay, good. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting myself and being in front of these panelists. Thank you so much. And of course to the sponsor and all of the organizations. Thank you to Masa Fund specifically. They always get me involved in so many great places. My story is really, it's funny because my parents are Bolivian and Colombian. So they both met in the United States. We talk about always how the United States is such a melting pot, and that's what happened in my family. And some of the things within the Latino culture are very similar in many cultures. You know, we're very family oriented. We're always very late. We love having family meals. We sit down. Same very similarities, right? And one of those similarities, which isn't always the greatest thing, is that there are differences between our men and our women in our cultures growing up. And a lot of times, the women do, even in the Hispanic culture, the majority of the time, it is expected, women will cook, women will still stay home, women will take care of the children. And that's great. Those are things we value and love. But it also caused same issues of how do we break out into the communities to do so much more of a differences, right? And being leaders to younger women and generations that want to do lots in the community as well with their families. And so that is where kind of it triggered me. My mom is an amazing, amazing woman. She, everybody loves her in the community, in our neighborhood. She loves cooking for everyone. If you come to my house, she will feed you, and you will have to try something. Yes, it's really great. And so one of the things she really installed in me is obviously dedication to the family, but most importantly, I could truly do what I want to do and strive for what I want to be. And my father was an amazing, amazing father to support all my crazy decisions. Being the only female in the family, my 3 brothers would wrestle with me, they were crazy, you know. So I grew up in that household with male dominance. But it taught me that, right? It taught me I could also be in that dominant position in leadership. So that caused me to really break away and break out into the world in a way that I said, you know, I can do and be out there and show others that we could do the decisions we want to do, and most importantly, making a difference for women. And so that's kind of where my story started. And a lot of my professions, as she read my bio a little bit, a lot of my professions, the majority dominated by men. I mean, you know, a federal officer, the majority of the time, I'm surrounded, right, all by men that dominate in those professions. But what's great is that bringing the woman perspective in every single one of the professions that I had, including being a federal officer, was very simple. Women intuition, no men could beat that, right? So when we did interrogations and we had to do some investigations at the airport or whatever it was funny. Women officers were the ones that were called. A lot of times when we approach a lot of situations as females, you know, we have different ways of approaching it. And at the end of the day, the end goal is met. And so that was just something else that kind of triggered and said, you know what, we have to be out there in the world and bring these perspectives that are needed. And as we grow, we see all of these great women in leadership roles. And if not in those roles, some life-changing experiences wouldn't happen, not just to individuals, but changing communities in general. And I can tell you that, you know, from that experience being a federal officer, going into the other side of the fence, right? I was before following what policymakers were doing. Then I became a policymaker by becoming a commissioner. And just to give you some statistics, you know, in Osceola County alone, there's only been 2 female Latinas in Osceola County today, and we're in 2023. In some counties in Florida, there's never been a female commissioner. And I'm not saying that to bring men down. Please don't think that. Men are great and they make great decisions. Hey, how are you? Come on in. But what I'm saying it for is because think of the perspectives that women in leadership need to bring, right? We think differently when it comes to not just family, but also women opportunities, education, right? Which is huge. Just culture, religion, and all these different types of things. So bringing those perspectives are really important. And I can tell you, being in the roles that I've been, whether it's policy making or being in the roles of making those decisions on the federal level, it's always very critical for me when I'm in a room is I involve different people to make these decisions. When we're talking about changing something, whether it's changing a policy, an ordinance, creating something that's going to affect everyone in the community, who do you bring on the table to discuss it? Like, I can fix anybody's pothole here. That's not an issue, right? You fix potholes, we do lights and all that. That's what we do in a commission, as commissioners. But another thing we do is we put rules and regulations locally that affect you every single day. And then we also advocate on the state and federal levels for laws that can change our lives and the lives of our children. And so when we talk about how women have to get involved within not just, of course, education and all that, because that's great, that's how we have to do it, but also getting involved in leadership roles that perhaps we're not that comfortable. Put yourself in positions where you're not that comfortable, and you're going to see amazing rewards, not just for yourself, but for your family and for the people around you. I've always advocated that. I think, of course, having a supportive family around you to help you. I'm very lucky to have a husband that lets me go out and do all these great achievements in a community around the dominant of men in many times when we make these decisions. But it's because he also understands the importance of that. It's because we also have a young girl, she's 17. I want my daughter to have those opportunities to say, I need to be out there influencing, advocating, and directing how this country is going to be tomorrow for our children. And so the way to do that is bring in all of your influence, bring in your ideas. That is the most important. And I can tell you some of the achievements have been very simple for me. Has been, how do I advocate for most people to get involved to make the changes we have to make, whether it's social services, whether it's bringing in whatever it is, right? It's involving our youth. I created committees for kids from 5th grade through 12th grade to come and get involved in our community that young, because we've got to get to them young. That is the way that I was taught in my own home when my mom or dad would say, yes, you can do that, yes, you can do that, go do that, you want to get involved in that, learn about it. And so I think our young leaders today, as we see on social media, they're heavily involved in not just politics in general, but they're heavily involved in lots of social efforts. And I think that that's amazing. It is the first time I've seen it in my lifetime, and my dad says the same, it's the first time he's seen it in his lifetime. And so I think it's a wonderful advantage at this time that we have that. And so for our young folks out there today, which I see a lot of you out there, I'm so happy to see that, is get involved, do what you know is best. Definitely reach out, I can tell you, to your local politicians, because that's where the difference is made. And definitely reach out to whatever profession you like, whether it's education. For example, reach out to those folks that do amazing things in education and bring in opportunity. I think that that's a step in the right direction. So I'll stop talking. I just wanted to definitely reach to our younger generation, because that's very dear to my heart. So thank you so much again.
So just to say,
Oh, that one's better.
just to say, I'm mindful that it's almost of thought time, but we don't want to finish, wow, I love when it echoes my own voice. But we don't want to end the panel right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear Dr. Hashmi give his open remarks. And then if the panelists are okay with it, we'll break for fast and we'll come back up to do some of the question and answer, because I have so much I want to deep dive into from what you all were sharing.
Well, great, thank you so much. So I was already anxious being the only man on stage, and now I'm also right before the iftar, so that's a double whammy there. I'd like to thank Ivana and Tayyib for giving me this opportunity. Like I said, I was a little bit anxious being a man, and said I think the audience will figure it out that I'm not a woman, but so just to give you a little bit about my story, I started out as a Muslim fundamentalist, I would say, or at least in college. It was like 9/11-ish time around then, and that really caused this kind of rightward shift amongst us young Muslim men. I eventually then moved to Pakistan for about 6 years of my adult life. That, ironically or not, actually caused the reverse shift in me, because that's when I realized what fundamentalists do when they have power. In America, it's just what you can speak, ideally speaking, utopia, fundamentalist utopia, but in Pakistan you can actually see it in action. In fact, over there in Pakistan, you'll notice in the public square women are almost completely absent. It's like 99% men everywhere. So this caused a shift. I grew concerned about religious minority rights, women's rights, human rights. I started reading up more on our Islamic heritage. I started reading about more enlightened Islamic thinkers of the last couple centuries. And so my whole mindset started changing over this course of time. I moved back to America, so I initially trained as a physician. I finished my residency. I'm basically South Asian, so I had to do either engineering or medicine. I did both. I hated both. I still practice as a physician to pay the bills, but my true love and passion, like someone else on the panel, is in Islamic studies. So I eventually went back to the university to do studies in Islamic studies. I'm now at the tail end of my PhD in Islamic studies, and I always knew that I wanted to do public scholarship, not just working in the ivory tower, but engaging the public, changing the discourse, because I'm very concerned about the way we talk about Islam in the public square. And so that's why I joined MPAC. So we just recently launched the MPAC Research Bureau. And then it's been a few months. We started our YouTube show called The Impactful Scholar. The reason for doing this is that, again, I'm very concerned about the voices right now on the internet, which are dominated right now by two extremes. One extreme is the Islamophobes, so that same 9/11 Islamophobia that I felt, that didn't go anywhere. And then you have the Muslim fundamentalists on the other side. And this has been combined now with the Andrew Tate phenomenon. So there's the alt-right, there's the incel movement, there's the red pill movement, the men's rights movement, and this toxic mix has now formed together with Islamic fundamentalism, Muslim fundamentalism, with what we call, I got credit, even though I didn't make up this term, but I was really grateful that I got the credit for it, the right movement, that is now something very powerful on the internet. In fact, we're probably all going to be featured on their YouTube shows when this goes up public, because they have women in their crosshairs, Muslim women in their crosshairs. So this is one of the topics that I'm very interested in, even though I'm not a woman, but I'm interested in the top 3 issues that Muslims are facing right now, which is Islam and violence, Islam and science, and Islam and women and human rights. So that's why I got interested in this topic. So that's my story. Why I think that Muslim women, girls and women, they're like, hurry up, finish, we got iftar, is that, I lost my train of thought now. Is because it is very true that the Islamic institutions are dominated by men, and where we train our ulama, the imams, some of them are very good, but the fact is that they're training in very, I would say ultra-conservative societies. Many of them are authoritarian states. Saudi Arabia is a big one. Petrodollars has caused a rightward shift in Islamic thinking since the 1970s. We actually had very enlightened thinking in the 19th and early 20th century, and then since the 70s, at least, it's gone in the other direction. So we really need to break that, and in order for that to happen, we do need Muslim women voices. And it can't just be Muslim women. Even Saudi Arabia can put forward, it was really funny when they put that panel of women's rights or council, and it was all men. But they can find women as well. They'll be all burqa-clad women that will basically say the same ideology. Just because you change your gender doesn't mean you change your thinking. But diversity is important. But it's important also to be brave and to think it's okay to ask the tough questions, critical thoughts, push back against things that we may have grown up thinking, and also realizing that our Islamic tradition is not synonymous with Islam itself, that a tradition is a tradition. It's historical, it's contingent, and even though we may love and respect the great scholars of our tradition, they were nonetheless human beings, products of their time, and we need to realize that in pre-modern societies, there was honestly some level of misogyny that was just normal, and we need to accept that. Half of my white hairs are from reading some stuff that our classical scholars said about women. If you read it, it will make your hair gray. But that's okay, that's part of all religious traditions, and we need to be accepting and understanding of that, love them for what they did that was right. but challenge them or challenge the tradition on things that we think they got wrong, especially when it comes to women's rights, because we really need to rethink something. So women were thought in many ways as sexual objects. Property, marriage was pretty much an exchange of not just property, but, well, I don't want to go into the details, it's quite crass and vulgar, but these are things that we really need to think about. And so I'm trying to get those discussions out in the public, and it's tough. You get a lot of pushback, you get a lot of criticism, you get a lot of names thrown at you, you get called kafir, heretic, all these things. But one thing is where I think I could be an ally is that I have a very tough skin, and, well, I cry at home, but then I have a tough skin in public. But I fight back. And you need allies, because this Act Right Bro movement, they can be very nasty, and when it's a Muslim woman, oh my God, they spare, nothing. They'll attack your looks, they'll attack what you're wearing, they'll attack everything about you, and it's important that you have as many allies as you can, and we need to work together. And the reality is, and I'll close with this, is that we should have recognized that we are in a minority in the sense of we are ahead of our community, and that's okay. We're the thought leaders, and we're ahead of our community. And so that's the challenge. How do we move our community without breaking? Now, when you're moving ahead, you still want one foot in the tradition, and you want to take one step forward as well. And you need to know the tradition. You need to know the tradition, in fact, better than the conservative or ultra-conservative traditionalists. Because if you want to critique something, you need to know it better than them. And so what I encourage is that we need more Muslim women who are going into Islamic studies, and not just going to Islamic studies, but also learning all of the technical skills, all of, language, Arabic takes at least a decade or two to learn, perfect. The classical sciences, you should be able to access the classical sources, because this is the fight that we need to engage in if we want to win on this platform. So if we want to get Muslim women in leadership roles, Muslim women in leadership roles in all of the other areas of life, we still have to fight that fight within the religious thought, because until we break through that, they're not going to allow us to go into those other realms uncontested. So that's my long and winded answer, and my wife says I talk way too much and I have to listen more, so I will try to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. I'm going to welcome Ivana back to the stage to give us some next steps. Ivana, come on up.
Thank you. I think I can just have.
Oh, perfect.
Was yours the one that was making trouble? I think this is the one that was making trouble, so hopefully that was the one. All right. We're going to break. We're going to break tonight. We were going to have our entire panel before dinner, but we don't want to hold you hostage. We've been to those events where you're waiting around to have dinner after fasting for the whole day. We do not want to do that. So we're going to break for prayer first. We're going to call the adhan. We're going to pray our Maghrib evening prayer. Afterwards, we're going to head over to the buffet for dinner. And when you come back to your tables, feel free to look at some of the cards. We have icebreaker questions, get to know the people at your table. And then, obviously we're going to continue with the panel, and we're going to have a robust discussion over dessert and some amazing coffee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Earlier, and as I maybe didn't mention earlier, I'm here in my own personal capacity. We had a conversation over dinner that I have to, and I like that disclaimer, because I want you to know what you hear is coming from me and not from any other organization that I represent. But I thought that everything you all shared in your stories were very powerful. One thing that thematically stood out to me across the board was that each of you had a moment of impact that essentially paved the way for where you felt empowered to do the mission that you all of a sudden were embracing. Either you had wanted to embrace and you finally felt empowered to embrace, or you were on the trajectory to embrace ultimately, but it was the push you needed of confidence. And it was so important to their stories because it was that poignant perspective in that moment that, to me, changed the trajectory of your life in the most positive way and got you to where you are today. So on that point specifically, can you speak to the role of mentorship and sponsorship in helping women in particular succeed in their roles, or even for people who are trying to stand out, like for you, Dr. Hashmi, like trying to break through the mold of what is the social norms. What role does mentorship and seeing examples of the work that you are trying to do in the community give back to women, and how do we set them up for success?
Do you want to answer first?
Whoever, it's open.
Your name?
Open to everyone.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. So I would say, as a teaching fellow,
Lights off.
Mine's off.
I hope that's not mine. All right. Yeah, so I, as a teaching fellow, do have students, and many of them are women students. And I do think that there's a big role to play to mentor these students and to make sure that they don't undercut themselves or undervalue themselves. Forgive me if I'm overstepping here, but I do feel like it's a tendency amongst some women to be very modest and think, you talk to a man, he'll be like, fake it till you make it kind of thing. And a woman have already made it will be being very humble. I've seen academics who are Muslim women or like they're professors, and yet when they're talking on a public stage, they'll say things like, well, I'm not a scholar. By that they don't mean like I'm not a traditional Islamic scholar, but they're like downplaying themselves. So I think there is a role to play where we make sure to tell people that don't do that to yourself and pursue, your highest aim. Like what? Don't say you can't do it. You can do it, and give them the guidance and the pathway to do those things. So, for example, in my field, in Islamic studies, I make sure that if there's female students who have a lot of potential, to counsel them and encourage them to take on this path. I have a few students in mind in particular. Some of them are quite wise in saying there are no jobs on the other end, and I don't want to do that. But I do think we need Muslim women to go into these fields, because that's how we're going to change the thought. And on the religious thought aspect, I think we need more women in Islamic studies. And I think going the university route is probably the more effective route than going to a traditional Islamic institute abroad. There's challenges with both, but in any case, the point is that yes, mentoring is incredibly important from that standpoint.
I could go. Go ahead. Either way. Just on that, definitely. Can you hear me now? Yeah. So with Rabata, which is so beautiful, it's based on mentorship also. We have accessibility to female scholars, and they make the deen so relatable. It's not something so foreign or something outside of my everyday life. There's no separation of the deen from who I am. It's actually taking it and implementing it in your life, in your everyday life, and making it applicable to you. So that whatever you're learning, you're using. And then you have that mentor, and we do that, we'll pass it on to, I have a few students also, that mentorship is critical. You've walked that, I've crossed this bridge, so I can show you how to cross it, and then you can make it your own. You bring to it what you have and who you are. So mentorship is absolutely critical, and for women specifically. Not to say that you couldn't have a male mentor, but I just feel like there's a deeper connection because she'll understand who you are and what you're coming with. As a woman, we deal with families and we've got children, careers. We're juggling so many different avenues of ourselves. And to have a mentor who's walked that path before you, show you how to navigate that is priceless.
There's a couple of things that set you apart in a career if you have like the same skill set as someone else. One of those things is emotional intelligence, and the other is mentorship. And so typically in a corporate world, and we could probably relate this in some aspect to our masjids and our leadership in the Muslim community. In a corporate world, men are mentored more on the financial end of things, the business side, and then a woman with the same skill set would then be leaned towards and mentored towards HR. And so that affects our ability to rise as leaders. If we're getting a different skill set than men, that's going to set them apart. And so creating some equality within that mentorship is key to keeping and putting women in power. At Embrace, I was mentored by both men and women to lead halakas, which I had no idea even what that meant when they told me what it was. To teach new Muslim classes, I took a class myself, and then I'm able to teach students every 6 months, to speak at ICNA conventions. And that mentorship was key to putting me in a place in power where I could mentor not only other women, but other men to do the same. And it comes full circle, right? Another thing, I'll go back to that. Another thing about mentorship, there was a study done about givers and takers by Adam Grant. And the key question he would ask in his interviews was, tell me about a time you were mentored and tell me about a time you mentored others. And people who focus on the up, oh, this person was so great, they mentored me, they're amazing, and they found, leadership potential in me, ended up being takers. But the people who talked about mentoring others are the ones who are actually givers. And that is good for every single person in the organization. And we see that as a soft skill. Now, coming full circle, at a time in my life, after I had already gotten a position in leadership, I was suffering through a divorce. My sister, my cousin, and my best friend had all passed away. And I had to move back home to support a family member who was suffering through mental illness. And I took a step back from that leadership to focus on myself and to heal. But while I was gone, it was really surprising that my Embrace Fellows actually nominated me to be the lead of the Northeast, even though I was going through something so tough. And they were willing to support me, to have me sit in that position. And it felt almost hypocritical because I was at a time where my iman was so low. I was being put on stages to empower people to pray, and I was having struggles with myself praying on time. But what that did to me is it allowed me not only to teach, but to learn from every single person that was sitting in the room with me. And little by little, it increased my own iman. And it made me so grateful for all of the people that were in that community and in that room with me. Because just as I was supporting them, they were supporting me. And so at the end of the day, I think mentorship, it's empowering, it's going to equalize, but it's also a very powerful tool in creating community.
I could tell you that when we talk about mentorship, it has to be way.
Just turn it off.
Turn them both off. I think they're both not working. Okay, now this one is. I can tell you mentorship is key word to many other words, and one is inspiration and inspiring, right? Each and every person in this room could be a mentor because each and every person in this room could inspire someone to do something also that they love to do. Whether it's volunteering and helping in your community, whether it's running for office, whether it's working in education, whether it's working in anything, you inspire our younger generations to do something. So you're an automatic mentor because they're watching you. Just like your children are watching you, the young people watch what you're doing and what you're saying. I know a lot of parents sometimes they say, do what I say, not what I'm doing sometimes. But it's true, our kids watch us, but so does the younger generation. So each and every person in this room, remember that. When you're out there and you're passionate about whatever it is that you're doing, there's some other person watching that and saying, wow, that's really cool. I want to have that feeling. I want to do that too. That's a mentor. So, you could say a lot of things about obviously being out there and helping and participating, right? A lot of us do that. But I think also remembering
that you're also being watched by others that perhaps are not out of their shell yet. And they're just wanting to see what is their passion gonna be, and they're looking for that person to inspire them. So then you become the mentor.
I love that, great answers. You know, going off of this, one of the trigger words that we hear in the world that we're living in, whether it's on social media or in the corporate world, or even the nonprofit world, is diversity and inclusion. And how do we attain diversity and inclusion? It seems like it's a checklist that includes hiring women, that includes hiring people from different intersectionalities of their identities. And I think a lot of times when we talk about women, we kind of forget about that intersection of the other identities these women may carry. You know, being a visible Muslim woman, coming from a different racial background, ethnic background, ability, it doesn't really matter. So there's so many layers to what we bring to ourselves. What do you say, and like in your opinion, in the work that you do, and to the people in this room, about what it really means to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion? And how can they go ahead and implement that and welcome more women into that space? And also, not just women, but anybody who has intersectional identities that are underrepresented or not even represented at the table, decision-making table, specifically.
Go ahead, you want to start? Yeah. Give the mic, you start. That's good. We'll share it.
It's DE&I is a very like popular topic.
Yes.
I can tell you, as a white woman who grew up in the U.S., my ancestors actually signed the Declaration of Independence.
Wow.
And then becoming a hijabi, that's when I started getting the, you know, where are you from? I'm from New Jersey. Where are your parents from? They're from New Jersey. What about your grandparents? Also from New Jersey. But like, where are they from? Questions. And there's been plenty of times where I've been put in places because I have that mentality, like that comfortable, the comfortable diversity, right? I speak like everyone else. I have the same experiences, but I wear hijab. That's not DE&I. Me sitting in my office, being able to make it a promotion every single year where a black woman sitting next to me hasn't been promoted for 10 years is not DE&I. It's a lot more complex, and it's a lot more, it's very whitewashed. So how do we make a difference? When we're lifting up others, we all should remember a time when we felt minimized, when we felt left out, when we felt like our voices didn't mean anything. And in those moments when you have power, when you're in power, it's important to pass the mic. It's important to share that voice and help echo, not take credit for, but echo voices of people who are in color, people who are not being heard and not being seen. And that's just the start. And so with that, I'm gonna pass the mic to someone who's not a white American woman.
Okay, wow. That is amazing. That was profound, definitely. Very beautiful. So what I would like to talk about is DE&I in our organization. And, you know, we talk a lot about race, and you talked about gender, and that we're multi-layered. But what's really important is our spiritual diversity, right? We all practice our faith in a different way. We all connect with our Creator in a different way. And I think in the past, there's been like this one, like you said, fundamental way to practice. And if you didn't do it that way, then you're doing it wrong. And you got to fix yourself. So what's beautiful about Rabota, what I love about it, is Auntie Tamara really enforces that spiritual diversity. She'll take you as you are, whatever you come with. You are one of us. You are a part of it. So you feel that inclusion, right? No matter how I was raised in my faith and how I choose to connect with my Creator, I'm still included. I can bring all of that and I can practice my faith in a meaningful way. And that's how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the greatest example of D&I, right? He included everybody. He felt everybody's needs, what they were coming with, what they needed. He knew you before anybody else could know you or see you. And that was a beautiful quality of his. And I think that's what he taught all of us. That's what D&I is. Don't see people just their external. And don't see people as one thing, right? Just a gender or just a race. But they're a whole package. And they also come with a spiritual diversity, which you have to embrace. And they don't have to look like you, right? We don't have to all practice the same way. And we don't all have to be in the same level, right? All of us practicing on this level. That's what's so beautiful about our faith. And that's what I experienced in Ramadan. It's spiritual diversity and acceptance, equity and inclusion. Very beautiful.
When I think about diversity, it always drives me back to my family. And I mentioned earlier that my parents met in the United States, being from Bolivia and Colombia. So 2 different countries coming together in the US. But it's even further than that. Each and every one of us actually married a different culture and country, right? So my husband's from Pakistan. My brother's wife is from Russia. My other brother's wife is Dominican, Puerto Rican mix. And my other brother's wife is from Guatemala. So there's differences, I think, in my own family so much that in the United States we were able to embrace as a family, right? We come together and we got plates from all these different places. And so it was, to me, it really drove home, and going out into the community and seeing that there is some disconnect, especially in this country, being the way that it is, of course, right now politically. But I think it's important that whenever we're out there, right, that we have to then make it feel every event, every community thing we do, and everywhere we are, you know, show the example of allowing inclusiveness. So if we see something, whether it's something that is discriminating or whether it's something that's uncomfortable, it's important that as leaders, or we take those steps and measures to say, hey, that's not okay. Sometimes we forget that. It's the truth, men and women. And so I think it's important when we talk about diversity is that we have to put ourselves to be put in positions that are uncomfortable, to stop things that we see are not correctly done, especially when it's done around our young generations. Because again, they're watching us, right? And they see what we do. And so it's important that they see that we're gonna take the steps in the right direction as well, so that in this country there's inclusiveness. And I don't think it's ever gonna be 100% perfect, but at least we can try to drive ourselves into that right direction.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad I went last so I could piggyback off some of these answers. One of my policies has been, or one of my concerns has been, that as you take a public role, you may be forced to speak on each and every topic under the sun, and you may not be an expert on that topic. That's where a lot of celebrity scholars get into trouble. Celebrity doctors too. You're a cardiologist, why are you speaking about this or that? So on that point, I will just clarify or put this disclaimer that I'm not an expert on this topic, so I don't generally talk about it. It's a very polarizing topic with, you hear polarized talk on the left and the right. I'm definitely of the view that obviously diversity is super important. I have some hesitancy with, I myself am South Asian, but I come from a highly privileged background back home. So I don't want to exploit that when I work in a rural part of the state, an underserved ER where people who are from much lower means than me, but I could easily claim, oh, I'm the minority. But so whereas I don't want to discount, trust me, I don't mean that as a right-wing talking point. I definitely think diversity is extremely important. But I would just say that I'm not an expert on this topic. So where I would piggyback off is the religious diversity aspect, because that is where my specialty is I think it is extremely important that we fill positions with people who have diverse religious views, whether it's in our Muslim organizations, institutions, and universities. So it's not sufficient that we just have people who are of different, colors physically. We also need to have people with different religious views. And in the Muslim community, we do have a big problem with this, especially the Sunni Muslim community, where we exclude people who come from non-Sunni backgrounds, or even from non-quote-unquote orthodox, according to me, background. And so from that standpoint, I think we need to work much harder not to be hypocritical where we're talking about diversity and inclusion outside for us, but we're not doing it inside with us. So forgive me if I said anything wrong here. All my views are very tentative on this topic, and I don't mean to be dogmatic at all on this. So thank you.
I got mine. This was all really helpful. That was a good, those were really interesting answers depending on the perspective that you all bring. I wanted to add a couple of things because I've been in this space my entire career where I felt like I've had to fight for my voice to be heard and to be taken seriously in the spaces of policy and campaigning in DC. And one of the ways that I've engaged people on how to actually be diverse, equitable, and inclusive and giving access to everybody is by challenging the notions of white supremacy that we intrinsically have as biases in the majority of these spaces. And I think when people think of that word, they immediately go to the January situation that happened in the Capitol Hill, and they just think the far right. What I want you to challenge is like, it's actually, to me, and how it plays out in the typical spaces at work, it's that notion that because you are of this race or have a white race and have that white privilege, you are in a better position to be more successful. You will get more opportunities at your job. You will be promoted for growth, as Jackie was saying, over other people who may have the same qualifications, may be just like you in every way from experience and knowledge, but just lack in that one identity. And so one way that I've encouraged people to do this is part of what Peggy was saying, which was you see something, say something. That bystander intervention, first and foremost, is really important, especially if you are from that privileged community. You can be Muslim and have an identity where you are actually underrepresented in your Muslim identity, but still be white passing and have the privilege of my racial identity. And I'm the same way as Jackie is, because I can be very white passing. The only thing that differentiates me is my faith and wearing the hijab so visibly. But it's about calling out our privilege in those spaces and ensuring that we bring up the names of people in our employers, right? In our situations where we're putting forward our colleagues, we're uplifting their voices. When Black Lives Matter movement was happening, everybody was trying to figure out, what do we do as organizations? What do we say about it? It wasn't the time for people who have that privilege and identity to speak up and take the lead. No, it was like, how do we center those voices and how do we uplift their voices? And in the workplace, for example, or in the community organizing space, it's by listening to them. It's by leaning into what they have to say and following their leadership, but also getting educated on the issue, because it's not their responsibility as a community to educate us on what they're going through. And so I constantly think through that bystander intervention. When you see something, say something, but also do something. Don't just sit and wait for the status quo in these places to change themselves. Policies aren't going to change themselves. At a job that I started, I don't know how many years ago, so it was a while now, 6 years ago, I started right before Ramadan started in this position. And you're coming into a new job, and this is an experience probably anyone can relate to. You want to put your best foot forward. You're on that probationary period for that first 6 months or 90 days, whatever the employers change that. And I got in there, and it was Ramadan. And they tell me that there's going to be a huge retreat for the entire team out in the woods in Massachusetts. Like literally we were going to a cabin, people I don't even know, so I wasn't even comfortable with that idea, but I want to be a team player. It's a team building retreat. It was really important for me to be part of that. But it was Ramadan. And I said to myself, I don't want to not go and not participate because of my faith, but I hope that they know, they all knew that I was practicing my faith and I was fasting, but I just wanted them to be inclusive of, for example, the times that I eat to have dinner at that same time, right? I get there day one, hadn't said anything. So, because I was still in a position where I felt like I didn't have a voice and I couldn't make that influence. When I was there day one, I looked at the program, and every time they had food or they ate was a time that I couldn't eat during the day, which was obviously expected, so I still wanted to participate and be part of the conversations. But then dinner was literally 45 minutes before iftar time, every night. And so I actually went up and I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't just say anything this time. So that first day, it was a 3-day event. The first day, I just ate by myself, leftovers, whatever was left. And there was not actually food that I could eat. There wasn't like, they didn't take into consideration potentially zabiha, halal, none of that. And it was okay, it was very lonely of an experience. They actually had moved on to other activities, you know, the culture that I don't engage in, alcohol, stuff like that, in a different part of the cabin in the area. And I remember feeling like, this doesn't feel right to me. I don't feel like I belong here, and I don't belong, but let alone like, I feel lonely. I don't feel like I'm part of the team. The next day, one of my colleagues, and this is why I say, when you see something, say something and do something. One of my white male colleagues came up to me and said, I noticed that you weren't really engaging with us yesterday during all the meal times. And I said to him, well, first, I was fasting, so I was a little tired, but I just wish that one of the meal times at dinner time was at the same time that I was having a meal. And he looked at me and he said, that seems so obvious. Like, I can't believe that we didn't even think about that, and I want to apologize, even though he wasn't a decision maker in this, but he took responsibility and ownership that he wanted to try to fix it for me, like that, so I didn't have to take that burden myself. So he went and spoke to the managers, and they changed the timing for dinner to be at iftar time for the rest of the retreat. And afterwards, they made sure that no retreats were planned during Ramadan, first of all, so that we could take full advantage as Muslims of that practice and that spirituality. But why I shared this really long-winded story is that it's a really tangible example of what it actually looks like to create this environment. And I see in this audience, we have a lot of folks here who are not from the Muslim identity, Muslim background, which is beautiful, but there's still a responsibility and role to play in that way. And even as women, there's a role responsibility to play about promoting women, about encouraging women to go promotions, that not having to decide whether to have a baby and get pregnant and take maternity leave or not take their full maternity leave policy because they're in fear of someone taking their job, someone taking their work portfolio, or not being promoted that year. These are all the real challenges we deal with every day, and those are part of the multi-layers that we show up with. So I just want to share a little bit more about my experience, because I think this is such an important topic, but it's a responsibility that we all have to play. And even if you're not Muslim, you have to think about how you're doing that for other communities where you have the privilege. I mean, if you're not a woman, it goes across all these intersectional identities. And so I really want you all to walk away thinking about what you contribute in that space. And I wanted to open it up now to anyone in the audience. If you have any questions for any of the panelists, we're getting towards the end of the program, but if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. We'll get a mic out to you if you want, or you can use a card on your table. There's some cards there where you can write your question for any of the panelists. This is the discussion, and we want this to be an open environment. So I'm gonna prompt you. This is my MC role.
Skip to the second question. The first one is the hardest.
Okay, yeah, we'll skip. The first one, it can be as random as you want, even. What? Oh, I have a question in the back.
I think I can project enough.
Okay.
I just have a question for whoever wants to take it. I just had a question for whoever wants to take it. As young Muslim women in medicine, like I'm in my first year, so it's very daunting. It feels like I don't belong, even though like I have Muslim classmates. It can almost always feel like you have to always put on this humble front and not be seen as like our other counterparts who kind of come off as arrogant, or like, you know, the term gunners, I'm sure we've heard. So how would you advise to combat that doesn't even have to be in medicine, in other spaces as well, to maintain that humility that we as Muslims should have, but at the same time not losing our worth, because it's easy to say that, but it's hard to implement it, I guess.
That's true.
Yeah, medicine.
All right, well, I can't speak as a Muslim woman, but I can speak as a physician who went to med school. But I was not a gunner at that time, so I can't speak from that perspective. I became a gunner in Islamic studies when I took on what I was actually interested in. But I'll answer that question in relation to that. I would say it's context dependent. So I would strongly encourage you that when you're in med school with other medical students and professors, that you be the gunner, you be confident, convey confidence, even if that's not what you're feeling inside. Do not undercut, underplay yourself. I cannot stress that enough. You gotta fake it till you make it, and the other guy's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
The guy who said he didn't study at all, and oh, I got an A+, I don't know how. He studied the whole time, all right? So play the game, that's just the way it is, and if you don't, you're gonna undercut yourself. Where does the modesty and the humbleness come? To the people in your real life at home, when you go home, speaking to people, especially people who you're going into the cafeteria, the people who are the cashier who's running up your food, the janitor, the people you meet in everyday life, the rest of your life, basically. But when it comes to your profession and career in that space, it's time to assert yourself, because if you don't, they're already going to be undercutting you with the hijab on. You already, you know, it's like a British accent gives you a +2, hijab gives you -2. And so maybe combine them and then you'll get a neutral. But yeah, you gotta play the game. That's what I would say. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's strategically what I would do.
Good answer, good answer.
Great
I-
answer.
I would just say 100% in anything you do. Be yourself. I mean, it's as simple as that. I know sometimes it sounds very difficult. I think even as adults, and we already have our careers and we've been out there, we also have doubts in everything that we do sometimes. We're in meetings, I'm in meetings, and even in the position that I am, I still doubt sometimes, tell myself, I'm still nervous when I go up in front of people. I was nervous before I came up here. I still have a lot of insecurities and no matter what. So I think what you have to understand is that many people feel like you, even being in those same classes, or being in any place that you're at. So the one thing is just, if you feel to say something, do something, or whatever it is, be yourself and do it. And that, believe it or not, will encourage others that maybe feel the same in your class that you don't even know, that would come up to you and say, wow, I'm glad you said that, or wow, I'm glad I was thinking that. I can tell you that every single time they say, and this is a lot what educators told me, is that there's never a stupid question, right? Because there's always someone else that's thinking about that same question. It goes round the clock for everything. So I encourage everyone to always be 100% themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Really quick, I'll keep it short.
So the thing about the humility and arrogance, your mind will play tricks with you on it. What should I do? Where do I err on? But what you can be proud of the way Allah created you. So if you're really smart or you really get things quickly, you can be proud of the fact that Allah made you that way. So it's giving it back to Him and showing it off for His sake. So it's not really saying, you know, I'm so smart, I did this myself. That would be arrogance, right? Thinking you're the one who created it. But if you're really good at a test, or you're really good at anatomy, or you're really good at some physiology or something, it's okay. You can be proud of it because Allah created you that way. So the one who's perfect only creates perfection. So you can show that perfection. And the humility comes because you're giving it back to Him. So be proud, be a gunner. I mean, I'm a gunner. Why not?
Love that. Love that. Any other questions from the audience? Oh, we have one right here in the front. Well, I don't know, Jackie, I want to open it up, but I want to make sure we're good on time. Do you want to answer?
It's okay, we can move on. Please.
Feel free to answer, Jackie. They want to hear
In
it.
addition to everything that everyone else said, I have a sister that I'm mentoring right now, and she's having a really difficult time because there's certain people in the group who are constantly undermining her leadership, and I feel for her, and it brings that, and I felt that way. I've had imposter syndrome. Like, if you told me 7 years ago I would be up on the stage today, I would be like, who what girl? But she kept feeling the need to talk about her qualifications all the time. And I sat her down and I said, girl, you're in the room. You made it. you don't need to repeat your qualifications to somebody who isn't going to give you the respect that you deserve. And so there is a type of quiet confidence of entering a room and understanding that you are there for a reason. Now, when you don't feel that way, what do? You've got to have good companions. This is a part of our religion, our deen, is to have people around you who are going to constantly remind you of why you're in that room. And you do the same for them. And that's how we all get there, because there is enough room at the top for all of us. And it's a beautiful display of what we're doing here today with Intuitive. There's 8 organizations here. We're not competing. We're all here lifting up women. So build that within your own group and build that quiet confidence within yourself.
Love that, Jackie. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeanette Martinez. I'm one of the city commissioners for the city of Kissimmee.
Woo!
I'm going to stand for the sake of this. This is more of a comment than a question. When I first ran for office, growing up in poverty, it was very difficult to believe I would be here standing today as a commissioner. And I am so grateful for you guys inviting me to this event today and learning about the Muslim culture, and it is amazing. You guys are just so welcoming. I am just proud to be here today with you guys. But what you just said today, I keep minimizing myself as a commissioner, because I can't believe still to the day of today that I was able to get elected in this position. And the lady sitting in the middle right here, Commissioner Peggy Chowdhury, she was my mentor. She told me, girl, you can do this. Just go out there, knock on doors in her spirit. And I said, you know what, I'm just gonna pretend I'm Peggy. Really big shoes to fill. So I knocked on doors, I did everything that I could do just to get this election going. I was not successful the first term, but I did it the second time and I was successful. So with that being said, today was a day I minimized myself. I spoke with someone and I kept saying, well, you know, I'm learning, but what you just said today, doctor, my husband kept telling me the same thing and I didn't listen to him. It took you to say it for me. So we have to step up our game as women, as minorities, but we're majority. So we can never forget that. We have to unite, stand tall, and walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Wow, I feel like I'm Oprah. This is awesome. Not really. Just like the energy, I kind of want to throw the shirts at everybody. You want a shirt? I think we have enough for all of them from Hasana. Any last questions from anyone in the audience? We have one right here, and then we're gonna wrap this one up, this panel. I love the energy in the room. You all are so engaged. I think it's the coffee, a lot of it, but that's good. Either way, we'll take it.
Can you guys hear me? Oh,
Yeah.
So I guess I'm gonna ask just like a fun question. Beyond what you guys do professionally, what do you guys do for fun? What are some of your hobbies, other passions? You guys are human beings. I'm pretty sure you guys enjoy other things. That's my question.
Jackie, start us off.
Jackie, you start.
I've had a lot of hobbies growing up. My current fascination is gardening and farming. My goal is to have a farmstead. I want goats and I want chickens. I also am an avid lover of hiking, and I did a 3-day section hike on the Appalachian Trail, and I love to camp. So being anywhere outside that reminds you of Los Parental's creation and brings you back, because what I realize is, like, when I start my own plants, right, versus me putting the seed in the ground, when I'm trying to get the right UV rays, water it correctly, do this, that, and the other thing, versus when it's just outside where Los Parental intended it to be, my plants fail more often than those that are growing outside. And it makes me just kind of go in awe. And that's just like one little moment of where that hobby has led me.
I love that.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. So hobbies, I wish I had time for my hobbies. 5 kids, full-time practice. And my passion, Rabata, I love learning and teaching. But I think reading is one of my passions. I love to read. I buy books and I stare at them in the hopes that one day I will have the time to sit and read. My husband, I have the bookshelf right where I pray, because we pray 5 times a day, so it's right in front of me. So when I'm praying, I finish, I look at my books, and they're like,
Hello.
do we have a date or we don't? What's happening? I also love the outdoors. I was a Girl Scout troop leader, so I dragged these girls out all the time, camping, kayaking, hiking, and running. I dragged my poor husband to a full marathon, Disney marathon. We ran it together.
Oh, wow.
It was soon after marriage, so that was the only time I was going to be successful. I know. But yeah, those are the things I love to do.
So if I'm speaking truthfully, I also look at my books that I bought that to read. That's one of them. But no, I really love, truly love being out in the community and participating in events. I also have to honestly say that I love being home and spending time, not just with my family. I have a Pomeranian. He's a cute little one. He's only 5 pounds. He's my baby. My daughter gets jealous sometimes, so I spoil him. So he really is. I come home, he's the first one that runs to me, loves me very much. So yes, he's the one who entertains me at home. I love being home. I love, if we're telling the truth, I love being home and just spending time there. Spending time with my family and my parents. Those are things that truly in my heart I love to do. And when I'm able to go out to the community to do a lot of fun things, I love to do them. As a policymaker, I get to do that a lot right now. So that I hope to continue even after, so that's what I love to do.
All right. So after hearing these answers, I realized this question was planted in order to show that we have no lives and don't have any outside interests.
I know.
My wife would tell me, I wish you were more normal and had some hobbies like sports. And so I did start watching a lot of UFC, so that's the only sport I watch, MMA. I went out a couple times, and my wife was like, yeah, go out, you should go with friends. And the first time I went, when are you coming back? Why aren't you home already? So that was a lie. But what I really do enjoy is spending time with my son. I'm a new father. I have an almost 2-year-old, so I love it. It's the best thing. Yeah?
Yeah.
Mine is 22 months.
Mine's 17 months.
Okay, awesome. I love it. It's the best.
It is the best. It's the best. That's amazing. Thank you to our incredible panelists. And before I pass up the mic, I want to just reemphasize one important message that they said that really brings us here tonight. Is there are 8 organizations that are under this umbrella tonight. Like, I've spoken at many spaces and been to many places, and I've never seen 8 organizations come together for anything, even like a sign-on letter. That's very, you would think simple, but not. Let alone an event focused under one theme of empowering women and redefining what it means to have women in these spaces, cross-generational, cross-cultural, in every intersection possible. And that's something that's very special that's starting right here in Orlando tonight. I hope we all remember this day, because I will. And remember that they have an amazing campaign under the Hasana platform. Hasana means good deed. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful than that name, and let alone the fact that there's a platform that is giving light to this name and truly being the definition of what this work is all about is incredible. So I look forward to seeing, hopefully, many more of you at future Hasana events, future Intuitive Foundation events, and continue to support this incredible campaign. I also personally want to give a shout out to my dad who came to join me here today, Dr. Chakin. This is the first time my dad even sees me speak, because he's always in a different country where I'm speaking somewhere else. So I love him, father of 7 of us. I'm the middle child. And they have the traditional engineer, lawyer, doctor represented. I'm sort of the black sheep in the family, and I love it. But he's supportive, and he's right here with me tonight. So thank you, Baba, for coming. And thank you all for having me coming in from DC. And I'm going to pass the mic. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to all our volunteers. Thank you, Tayyip. And come on up, Ivana.
No, you guys can do whatever you want. I don't want to kick you off the stage. All right. On behalf of Intuitive Foundation, myself as the host, I want to thank you for being here tonight. I want to thank you for your generosity, because it's not always about the dollars, it's about your being generous with your time when you could have been anywhere else. If you haven't had the chance to check out the organizations and their project that we're fundraising for, please stop by at their table. I'm truly inspired by your commitment and dedication to creating a better world for all of us. And I really, really believe that not only is there space for each one of us, that we must all come together to do this work, because we bring unique strengths, we bring unique perspectives, and only when we do that together can we be truly successful. So I do invite you to look at the different projects, but I also invite you to go forth and spread goodness in whatever part of your world you occupy. Thank you and good night.